All right, let's talk about a heist that was so audacious, so brilliantly planned, it became an absolute legend. We're diving into the 1963 Great Train Robbery. Now, this wasn't just some smash and grab. Oh no, this was a work of criminal art, and it completely captivated the entire world. Let's get right into it.
So picture this. It is the dead of night, August 8th, 1963. The Royal Mail train is just barreling through the quiet English countryside. And suddenly, the driver, a guy named Jack Mills, he sees a red signal way up ahead. Now, this is weird, right? He's in the middle of nowhere, but he's a pro, so he does what he's supposed to do. He stops the train. What he doesn't know is that he just drove headfirst into a perfectly set trap.
So the train screeches to a halt at a place called Sears Crossing. You can imagine the silence in the cab. Mills is probably feeling pretty uneasy, but, procedure is procedure. He has no idea that in that very moment, he has just hand-delivered a train packed with cash to a waiting gang of thieves.
So you have to be asking, how on earth did they pull this off? I mean, how do you just stop a high-speed train in the middle of the night and rob it? Well, this was not some lucky accident. This took months and months of planning, and it was all made possible by one crucial secret weapon. This was an inside job.
Okay, so meet the crew. It's like the real-life Ocean's 11 of the 1960s. The leader, the mastermind, was Bruce Reynolds. A super charismatic guy, very smooth, with a real taste for the finer things in life. And he knew this job was way too big for just his crew. So he brought in the best of the best, including a tough bunch known as the South Coast Raiders. This was literally a dream team of London's most infamous criminals.
And what was their target? Well, it was the HVP coach. That stands for High Value Packages. But really, you should just think of it as a bank vault on wheels. This was how the Royal Mail moved enormous sums of money all across the country, and it was an incredibly tempting prize for anyone bold enough, or maybe crazy enough, to even try to crack it.
But see, this whole thing wasn't just about muscle and guts. It was about information. And Bruce Reynolds had a man on the inside, a sort of ghost in the system, who was feeding him all the secrets that would make this robbery possible. And to this day, nobody knows who he was.
So here's the first incredible tip they got from their insider. The usual HVP coaches, the ones with the high-tech security and all the alarms, they were out of service that night. Instead, the Royal Mail was using an old, outdated reserve coach. And get this coach had no alarm system at all. It was basically a sitting duck.
Now that piece of information was huge, but it was just the start. The second tip was the real game changer. See, on a normal day, that HPV coach would be carrying around 300,000 pounds. I mean, that's a lot of money for the 60s, a huge score. But it was nothing, absolutely nothing, compared to what was on board that specific night.
Their insider knew that because of a recent bank holiday, it's like a long public holiday weekend in the UK when all the banks are closed, a massive backlog of cash was being shipped back to London. We're not talking 300,000 pounds anymore. We are talking almost 3 million pounds. To put that in perspective, that's over $67 million in today's money. This wasn't just a big score. This was the score of a lifetime.
So with a target that big and intel that good, the gang was ready. They were set. So let's jump back to the train tracks and see exactly how this whole thing went down. Their plan was just beautiful in its simplicity. Just 4 steps. First, rig the signal to stop the train. Second, storm the engine and take control. Third, force the driver to move the train down the tracks to a secluded bridge they had picked out. And fourth, load the loot. Simple, audacious, and absolutely brilliant.
Okay, so they swarm the engine, they take care of the driver, Jack Mills. Everything is going exactly to plan. And then, a huge problem. The supposed expert they'd brought along to actually drive the train couldn't figure out the controls. The engine was too modern for him. He just froze, and the clock is ticking, the pressure is mounting, and they're completely stuck.
So, in this incredibly cruel and desperate twist, they have to go back to the injured and dazed Jack Mills, get him back on his feet, and force him, at gunpoint, to drive his own train to their getaway spot. The very man they had just attacked was now the only person who could get them out of there. It was a brutal move, but they were running out of time.
Once they got to the bridge, it was just a total frenzy. They formed a human chain, literally throwing 120 heavy mail bags stuffed with cash down to a waiting truck below. We're talking 2.5 tons of money, moved in just 15 minutes. They were in such a rush, they actually left 8 bags behind.
So the truck is loaded. They're ready to vanish into the night. They've done it. But just as they're leaving, one of the robbers turns to the terrified train crew and makes a colossal mistake. He says one single careless thing that is going to bring their entire operation crashing down around them. The gang gets away clean. They make it to their hideout, a remote farmhouse, and the party begins. They are rich beyond their wildest dreams. They're free, and they think they've just pulled off the perfect crime. Or so they thought. Back at the farmhouse, they are just on top of the world, feeling absolutely untouchable. So what do you do when you've just stolen millions of pounds? Well, obviously, you break out a game of Monopoly. And in a moment of pure arrogance, why use the fake paper money when you've got bags of the real stuff lying around?
But here's the thing. The police were already closing in. That warning, don't move for 30 minutes, that was the key. The investigators were smart. They quickly calculated how far a truck could travel in half an hour and just drew a 50-kilometer circle on the map. And guess what was sitting right in the middle of it? The gang's farmhouse. The net was tightening. The gang was listening to a police scanner, and when they heard the search area announced, they completely panicked. It was time to go. They paid some local guy a huge chunk of cash to burn the farmhouse to the ground after they left, destroy all the evidence. But the guy, he just took the money and bolted. Their perfect crime was falling apart fast.
And because the hideout was left totally untouched, the police, acting on a tip from a local who thought the place looked suspicious, raided the farmhouse. And what they found inside, well, it was an absolute goldmine of evidence that would seal the gang's fate.
I mean, that farmhouse was like a crime scene in a box. The police found the getaway truck, which they'd hastily tried to repaint. They found the empty mail bags, and then they found the smoking gun, that Monopoly board. And even though they tried to wipe it down, it was still covered in fingerprints.
And here's the thing about career criminals. Their fingerprints are already on file with the police. That silly board game was all Scotland Yard needed. They started rounding them up, and within just a few months, almost the entire gang was behind bars.
The courts threw the book at them, 30-year sentences. The robbers became these infamous folk legends, these symbols of rebellion. But for Jack Mills, the train driver, there was no glamour. The head injury he got during the robbery left him with severe, lifelong trauma. He never worked another day in his life, and he died just 7 years later. He's really the forgotten victim in the crime of the century.
So in the end, yeah, 14 men went to prison. But 2 key players just vanished. The useless replacement driver was never found, and more importantly, neither was the mysterious insider. We still have no idea who that ghost in the machine really was. But one thing's for sure. Without him, there never would have been a great train robbery. And that, right there, is the biggest mystery of all.